Right now, the Philadelphia Eagles might be one of the most polarizing teams in the entire NFL. Just a few seasons ago, this team was playing in the Super Bowl and looked poised to become a long-term contender. Fast forward to today, and many fans are questioning the direction of the franchise. After a disappointing collapse, the Eagles went from being one of the league's elite teams to a wild-card exit. They still finished with an 11-6 record, but the numbers didn't tell the full story. Despite the wins, the offense was inconsistent, predictable, and all too often stalled out when it mattered most. So what exactly went wrong? On paper, most of the offensive pieces remained intact. Aside from a few defensive departures, this looked like a roster that should have continued competing at a high level. Yet, week after week, the team looked out of sync. The defense and special teams still showed flashes of being among the league's best, but the offense never seemed to find its identity. In this video, we're breaking down what went wrong, what's changed, and where the Eagles could be headed this season. But before we get started, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more NFL content. Now, let's get into it. Let's rewind to the end of the 2022 season. The Eagles came up just short in a heartbreaking Super Bowl loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. While the defeat hurt, there was still plenty of optimism surrounding the organization. Jalen Hurts had just completed an MVP-caliber season. The roster was loaded with talent, and it felt like Philadelphia's championship window was just beginning. The front office largely decided to run it back with the same core group, making only minor roster adjustments. On paper, it made sense. The problem? The following season exposed issues that weren't apparent during that Super Bowl run. The offense became stale. The creativity disappeared. What was once one of the most explosive units in football slowly turned into a predictable attack that defenses began figuring out. A major reason for that decline was the offensive coaching. The play designs lacked creativity. Route concepts often failed to create easy separation. The offense became heavily dependent on individual talent rather than schematic advantages, and too many drives felt like they boiled down to one question: can A.J. Brown make a play? When he could, the offense looked dangerous. When he couldn't, everything stalled. The result was an 11-6 finish that felt far worse than the record suggested, culminating in an embarrassing wildcard loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Against a blitz-heavy defensive game plan, Philadelphia looked completely unprepared and had no answers when adjustments were needed. Now, let's fast forward to the present. For Eagles fans, this offseason has brought both hope and uncertainty. In response to last year's disappointing performance, the organization completely overhauled the offensive coaching staff. They also made significant changes to the roster, including trading A.J. Brown, drafting Mekhi Lemon and Eli Stowers, and moving forward without longtime offensive line coach Jeff Stoutland, who retired after years of excellence. Let's start with the coaching changes. The Eagles hired Sean Mannion as offensive coordinator. While this will be his first major opportunity as a play caller, Mannion has spent time learning from some of football's most respected offensive minds. His background includes experience in systems influenced by Kyle Shanahan, Kevin O'Connell, and modern West Coast concepts. And that's important because it's a significant departure from what the Eagles have traditionally run. For most of his career, Jalen Hurts has operated best in shotgun-heavy systems built around the running game. That approach allows him to keep his eyes on the defense and process the field before the snap. The downside is that those offenses can become predictable. Defenses often gain pre-snap clues about whether a play will be a run or a pass, and the offense becomes more limited in its use of motion, misdirection, and play-action concepts. A new offensive system could change all of that. If implemented correctly, it could make the Eagles look much closer to the explosive offense we saw during their Super Bowl run. More motion, more deception, more balance, more opportunities for both the running and passing games to thrive. but that's a big if. Beyond the new coordinator, the Eagles have brought in an entirely new supporting offensive staff, including a passing game coordinator, run game coordinator, senior offensive assistant, and offensive line coach. That's an enormous amount of change on one side of the ball. It could completely revitalize the offense, or it could lead to even more growing pains. The roster changes are equally fascinating. After a disappointing and drama-filled season, the Eagles decided to move on from A.J. Brown. There's no denying Brown's talent. At his peak, he's one of the most physically dominant receivers in football. But whether it was injuries, declining production, off-field narratives, or frustration within the offense, the partnership had clearly lost momentum. Trading a player of that caliber is never easy, but Philadelphia clearly believes the future lies elsewhere. That future may begin with rookies Mekhi Lemon and Eli Stowers. Both players bring athleticism, versatility, and a skill set that could fit perfectly into a more modern offensive scheme. Their presence opens the door for more motion, more jet sweeps, more creative alignments, and a wider variety of passing concepts. Instead of relying on veteran star power, the Eagles appear to be betting on youth, speed, and flexibility, and that gamble could define the season. At the end of the day, the defense should still be solid. The special teams unit should continue doing its job. Everything comes down to the offense. If the offense takes a step forward, it could validate Jalen Hurts and prove that coaching was the biggest issue all along. But if the struggles continue, the Eagles could find themselves facing yet another offseason filled with difficult questions and major changes. Personally, I'm optimistic. The talent is still there. The potential is still there. But whether this team returns to contention or sinks deeper into uncertainty will depend entirely on whether this offensive overhaul actually works. And that's what makes the 2026 Philadelphia Eagles one of the most fascinating teams in football.